So as we think about these lines, that the greatest kindness is like water. Now, for me, when I think of that, and that water goes to that place that the mass of people really don't like. Water goes where I don't want to go. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go down the drain. I don't want to go into the sewer, right? And yet water, which is that thing that nurtures the whole world, that's exactly what it does. It goes to those dark and yucky places. And that got me thinking about, the power of apology. And like if we're talking about kindness, we need to be kind in our relationships with other people. And I don't know about you, but I find when I have been unkind to someone else, my conscience starts to bother me, and I can maintain this anger, like, oh, you did that to me, or they let's say they did that. Oh, he did that to me. He did this and he did that. And I'm angry, and I'm projecting something that actually I did to that person. And I'm been experiencing this in the last few days. I thought I was really quite right in the situation. Like, okay, I was right. And yet, it continues to bother me. So this morning, I realized, oh, I was maybe unfair. I was the unreasonable one. They say in psychiatry, apparently, that if you have, where there's a lot of anger, it's that we are holding something, that we are hurting that person, that we did something to that person. And the sign is that we are angry at that person because we did something to that person. And it's a way of maintaining our feeling justified in what we did. So that's a good sign. So being kind to myself, I know from experience that when I'm wrong, I'm better off to apologize. It helps me as well as it helps the other person. Well, and it may or may not even help the other person. They may or may not care. Usually they do care. And I unfortunately have a lot of experience with apologies because I have screwed up a lot. I like this here. The power of an apology is so great, don't ruin it by giving excuses. For example, so if you've been wrong, go ahead and apologize. And we need to be humble, right? We need to be humble like water. The water's always going down to the lowest place. So from that low place, we can say, yes, I was wrong about that. And I like in nonviolent communication, there's a way to apologize where we simply acknowledge, I have a value, like for example, in this case with this person, I have a value of being fair in relationships. And I didn't live up to my own value of wanting to see the other person's point of view in a fair way. And that I did not live up to my own standards in that interaction with you, and I'm sorry. And that's a nice way to apologize because it's really also validating ourselves very much. So that's my power apology from nonviolent communication. Now, thinking about water in particular, and I'm Canadian, and we have, so much beautiful water, so many lakes, and everything, we take water for granted. Another thing about water is that, did you know, it takes 1,500 gallons of water to make a pair of jeans? How much is that? 10,000 liters? 1 kilo of cotton requires almost 10,000 liters. So these things, these clothes that we get, that we enjoy, they're so cheap and they're so nice. And we can just throw them away. There's a cost. The planet is we're paying for that in the water crisis. It's directly contributing to the water crisis, our clothes. Funnily enough, this bag, I've had this bag. It's made out of natural fiber. I bought it in the Philippines 25 years ago. I'm still using it to this day. I'm still using it. So, we got to think about our consumer habits. Like, do I really need a new shirt and a new pair of pants every year or every 6 months or whatever? That's part of it. But I Googled actually water in low places, I think, and then I saw this, of course. And it's just a reality. And we look at all these countries, right? So many countries, like in Africa, where the people don't have water to drink. They don't have water to wash. I just can't imagine. So that's obviously, heartbreaking. And that kind of got me thinking, well, what could we do about that? And then I came across this very, very interesting statistic. These people, Water Resources Institute, now I don't know who they are. And when we are thinking about fake news, first question is always to ask who is paying for that information to be there. And in this case, I don't know who pays for the World Resource Institute, so I don't know how reliable this information is. But anyway, they are saying it would cost 1% of global GDP, global domestic product. So this is the number of the total production of an economy. It's not a very good way to think about it, but that is the number that gets used. They're saying 1%. They're saying 3 billion people don't have basic hand washing facilities, like a sink. 3 billion. So that's like not a quarter, that's like almost 1 person in 3 on the planet can't wash their hands properly. And so on. So they're saying 1% of GDP. Now, how much is global GDP? Well, apparently global GDP in 2020 was around $85 trillion. So how much is 1% of 85 trillion? Or I did 88 trillion. So that would be, there's the math. They did the math. It would be this number here. And in words, in English words, 880 billion. So for 85 trillion, it would be 850 billion. And that's a very interesting number because according to this site, dw.com, I suppose this is public information, it's probably accurate. In 2024, the United States allocated 886 billion. So that's pretty much the exact same number as that. Isn't that an interesting number? So in other words, if the United States stopped spending money on the military for 1 year, then that would be a thing of the past. It's incredible. It's incredible. Can you hear that siren? Now, we're not going to end the video on a down note because I want to point out that this is not an inevitable situation. This project here in this video, Greening the Desert, was a 10-year permaculture project in the country of Jordan, which is desert. You can see the land they started with. Just absolute crap. Sand, pebbles. And there is a way of managing water which does not involve drilling deeper and deeper and pulling water from here so that you have no water over there. That's how we're doing it now. But permaculture has a whole scientific way. I mean, That's what they started with. They have a plan. It involves a lot of steps. So they're building walls here, and the walls are having to do with ways of catching the water that there is there. Even in Jordan, even in these desert places, there is a certain amount of water in the air. And so they build these swales, they're called, and then they start planting certain things here. They're using different kinds of materials that they're going to be absorbing water. They're planting small little bushes that will grow in a small amount of water. And then they bring in different kinds of plants. Mulch is material that's ground up, and that's also hanging on to the water, catching the water. This organic material, which is not sand, but organic material like leaves and bark, and that will absorb the water. And people start gardening. They bring in soil. Now, I am familiar with this project. I heard about it before. Apparently, they got after this been going for some time, they got a phone call, and they said, "Oh, there's this thing. Something's going on in the soil." And they said, "Well, what is it?" And they said, "We've never seen this before. You come and take a look." And what it was there was fungus was growing in the soil, like mushrooms, and they had never seen fungus because normally fungus doesn't grow in such a dry area. So after some time, they had enough soil, because as things start to grow and then they die, that creates organic material. It also creates a microclimate where it cools the air above where there's something green. And so it's a virtuous cycle, they call it. And the more green there is, the more green there can be. So they start to have gardens, and then they were starting to grow fruit in there. They had more and more soil. And then when there's more soil, they can have bigger trees. When you have bigger trees, you can have shade. Not to mention you see all the people working here. Like, we don't need to be unemployed sitting in our apartments staring at our video screens. We could be farming organic food and saving the planet actively, like that, something like this. And speaking just a little bit more on the water management, here's a very interesting thing about planning for water. Permaculture is a design science, they call it, and that agriculture doesn't just happen by accident. You're designing for the water, you're designing for that environment, you're designing for the people and for the animals that live in that area. And this is a very cool little animation that they have here.
Permaculture, thriving ecosystems all around this world.
So this right here is exactly why we say that water is the foundation of permaculture design.
Permaculture help lead the way, yes, a new revolution.
This means that for any permaculture design project, first you start with the design for the water flow on the site, and then all the other layers, access and pathways, vegetation, buildings, gardens, animals, energy systems, all follow after that.
As you can see, there's a whole methodology for doing this. And, as we have more and more problems in the cities with people not having meaningful work to do, and also in cities where there's not enough fresh food, and people are trying to live out of the 7-Eleven, we could be doing permaculture in the cities. And we could change. We have the tools already, and it doesn't even cost a lot of money. So we also could be bringing ourselves back to the Tao. We got to get back to the garden, as the song goes. Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you for another series of the 1-minute characters, 5-minute translation, and the 15 or so minute observation and reflection. Now, if you have some thoughts about permaculture or water conservation, please leave them in the comments. Thank you.